Yeah, because on that, you have your own side hustles and things that you do. You're obviously involved in a lot of things in the startup world in Australia. Was there any kind of, and this whole belief that you have, around having a startup and how great that can be, did that stem from this time in Silicon Valley, or was there a key moment that you were like, okay, this kind of thing is going to be really beneficial for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I stayed in New York for a while, right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and stayed in sort of Lower East Side, right in the middle of COVID. And so for the Australian sort of listeners listening to this, I don't know if you guys remember Cuomo, so Governor Cuomo having his daily press conferences. And I was in Manhattan, right in the middle of that. And I saw the impact that COVID has on small businesses. And that sort of stuck with me because you just picture this: you're sort of living in sort of Manhattan, and you're surrounded by these like bodegas and delis and sort of family stores and sort of immigrant families coming to America, putting their whole life savings into this tiny little grocery or deli. COVID happens, the entire city is deserted, everything stops. Yet you see these business owners still trying to make a living, and that sort of that visual stuck with me. And a big part of what I, a big part of my values and what I've learned is you should always try to outwork and have that grit and determination to not just have your 9 to 5, but have a business on the side. And that's really sort of stuck with me. I've seen going back to New York and seeing these delis with these family businesses that were closing down. They're kids, these are kids of immigrant folks, would go to school or would have their day job, but would come back and work in their parents' sort of business and help them out with inventory, with marketing, and all these sort of things. And I sort of took a step back and said, look, I can do my 9 to 5, my sort of corporate job. I've worked with folks that have done that, and that's certainly fine. Folks have kids and families and other commitments, and that's certainly cool. But I saw the level of grit and drive and determination there, and I thought that's really freaking amazing, right? Like we, I don't want to look back at the end of my career. For grads listening to this and young folks, we're probably going to work for about 40 to 50 years. I don't want to look back at the end of that saying, I didn't take a risk. I didn't go out and build something and have something that will last post my career. I really want to have an impact. So that's sort of the fuel that is in me to go, look, yeah, you've got your day job, but then where else can I add value? Where else can I, like, what other challenges and projects that I can take on? So that sort of visual of being in the Lower East Side, the city's deserted, you've got an immigrant family with a ton of debt, paying a ton in rent, still trying to make that work. That sort of grit, that sort of stuck with me. The second part, I think, uh, in high school, I had a really formative economics teacher. I was sort of probably in year 10 and 11, I'm 16, 17 years old, didn't really know what to do. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Turns out you have to be good at physics, and I suck at physics. So that was out the door. And then I had this, his name is Lucas Rabenda, and I had him as my economics teacher. And he explained the world to me in through markets like demand and supply. I thought this is really interesting. And as I spent more time learning economics and sort of learning how markets work, it became really clear to me the power of owning assets. You can either be, there's different forms of resources, capital, labor, natural, but sort of learning economics, even through university, the big thing that stuck with me is you want to be in a position where you're owning assets. And a big part of that was through high school economics and playing games like Monopoly and realizing, look, hang on a minute, if you own all the properties on Monopoly and everyone's passing by and paying your rent, then you're in a good spot. And so that sort of stuck with me, right? It sounds really strange to say, but the ability of owning assets and building businesses and owning equity is something that stuck with me. So applying that now, um, you work at a big bank or you work at an accounting firm, you're sort of an employee. And I wanted to see at least the hard work that I'm putting in result in a commercial and financial sort of impact for myself. As an employee, you don't necessarily see that because you're getting a wage for working those 40-hour weeks, but you don't really see what the business is growing. How am I directly being compensated for that? And so a big part of that was owning assets and having equity. And to extend that a bit more, well, if I start a business or if I invest in other companies and have that almost rich dad, poor dad mindset, which everyone seems
Mm,
to read now, that would help. So those are probably the two things that kind of got me into this path.
yeah. I think that's really cool, and I think it's great that you have that experience and those things that are driving you towards this, and then you're also helping people on their path to do this as well.